The storm started like a bad movie cliché, the kind of downpour LA only sees once in a decade. Thunder cracked over the empty freeway, the kind of sound that makes you feel small. Power lines flickered, just for a second, like veins of lightning spiderwebbing across the sky. And inside a small apartment on East 7th Street, I was digging through boxes that weren't mine. It's boxes that belonged to my sister, Grace. She'd been gone for 10 years. The official story? She disappeared. But the unofficial story, the one whispered at hollow family gatherings, was that she was forgotten. The last time anyone saw her was July 18th, 1998. It was a grainy security camera still, showing her leaving a downtown parking garage, and then just nothing. No credit card pings. No phone calls. No body. The LAPD officially closed her file in 2001. The reason? It's insufficient evidence. Just like that, Grace Miller became case number 1074GM, a number on a forgotten folder in a dusty archive. But when our mother passed away that summer, everything changed. I inherited it all, the old furniture, the chipped photo frames. In a sealed brown box tucked away in the back of her closet, scrawled across the top in Grace's familiar handwriting, were 3 words that sent a shiver down my spine. Do not watch. My hands were trembling as I broke the seal. Inside, nestled in yellowed tissue paper, was an old mini DV tape, wrapped carefully in a faded blue ribbon. And on the tape's label, written in a thick black marker, were 3 more words, 4 Eli 2008. I hadn't seen her handwriting in a decade. It felt like a ghost had reached out and touched my hand. My heart was pounding against my ribs as I dug out my old camcorder from the bottom of a closet. My hands were shaking so much I could barely get the tape in. I pressed play. The screen flickered to life. First, just static, a blizzard of black and white. Then, a face emerged from the chaos. It was her, Grace. But she was different. Older, much thinner than I remembered. Her eyes, usually so full of life, darted nervously at something just off screen, something I couldn't see. She leaned in close to the lens, and her voice was a quiet, urgent whisper. If you're watching this, she said, her voice trembling slightly. Then you finally came back home. She took a deep, shaky breath, trying to steady herself. They told me not to talk. They said they'd make it look like I left on my own. But Eli, if you want the truth, don't call the police. Whatever you do, don't tell Dad. Just find the motel. Find room 6. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the video cut to black. No time code, no final words, just silence. I stared at the blank, hissing screen for what felt like an eternity. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the thunder was still rumbling, closer now. Echoing between the buildings, like heavy, deliberate footsteps. Something made me rewind the tape. I had to see it again. I played the last few seconds, frame by painful frame, her face, her eyes wide with fear. I looked closer, right into the reflection in her pupils. And that's when I saw it. A shape, a figure standing just out of frame. And right there, frozen in the corner of the screen, almost lost in the glare, was a sign. 2 words, burned into the neon glow. Sierra Motel, the Sierra Motel. I knew it. It was an old rundown place off the 10, the kind of place people go when they don't want to be found. A place forgotten by time, just like my sister. For 10 years, I'd accepted the official story. I'd let her become a memory, a ghost. But that tape, it changed everything. She wasn't a ghost. She was a messenger, and she'd left me a map. My mind raced. Don't call the police. Don't tell Dad. These weren't suggestions. They were warnings. Who were they? The people who made her disappear? The people who told her not to talk? And why that motel? Why room 6? It was a breadcrumb trail, and Grace had just handed me the first piece. The next morning, the city was washed clean by the storm. The air smelled of wet asphalt and ozone. I packed a small bag, a change of clothes, the camcorder and the tape. I didn't know what I was looking for, or what I would find. A part of me was terrified, but a bigger part, a part I thought had died 10 years ago, felt a flicker of hope. For the first time in a decade, Grace wasn't just a case file. She was a puzzle, and I was going to solve it. Driving toward the Sierra Motel, the city I'd known my whole life, felt alien. Every shadow seemed to hold a secret, every passing car a potential threat. I felt like I was stepping into the frame of that video, into Grace's world. The motel sign was exactly as it appeared in the reflection, a tired, buzzing neon script. Half the letters were burnt out. S. Ara Mo ... L. It looked like a place where stories ended. I parked across the street, my heart hammering against my chest. Room 6. The window was dark, the curtains drawn tight. Was this a wild goose chase? A 10-year-old clue that led nowhere? Or was I about to walk through a door I could never close again? I took a deep breath, the same shaky breath Grace took on the tape. She left this for me, for a reason. And I wasn't leaving until I found out what it was. I got out of the car and started walking. Thank you so much for coming along on this journey with me. This is just the beginning, and I have a feeling things are about to get a lot more intense. If you want to find out what's inside Room 6, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you do and miss the next part. I appreciate you all being here. See you in the next one. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a story that will send a chill right down your spine. It's a tale of mystery, of a brother's desperate search, and a past that refuses to stay buried. So, turn down the lights, get comfortable, and let's begin. The rain had stopped hours ago, but the streets of Los Angeles still glistened, holding on to the memory of the storm. Eli drove through the silent, wet city, the headlights of his car slicing through puddles that mirrored the neon glow of the metropolis. But Eli wasn't looking at the city. His focus was inward, consumed by a voice from an old cassette tape, his sister's voice looping endlessly in his mind. Don't call the police. Don't tell Dad. Just find the motel, Room 6. He'd replayed that single cryptic sentence every few minutes for the entire drive, hoping that with each repetition, it might suddenly make sense. His sister Grace had been missing for 10 years. 10 years of silence, of unanswered questions, of a void in his family that never quite healed. And now, this. A message from the past, a breadcrumb leading him into the unknown. His search led him to the far edge of the city, to a place that time seemed to have forgotten, past an abandoned gas station and a row of shuttered skeletal stores. He found it, the Sierra Motel. Its neon sign flickered weakly against the dark sky, buzzing like a dying insect. Half the letters were out, leaving a fragmented promise: vacancy. The parking lot was nearly empty. Only 3 cars sat in the gloom, 2 caked in dust, looking like they hadn't moved in years, and 1 sleek black sedan, idling silently under the pale light of a lone street lamp. The air hung heavy with the smell of wet concrete and stale cigarette smoke. It was a place where things ended, not where they began. Taking a deep breath, Eli pushed open the door to the office. Inside, a man sat behind the counter, barely looking up from his magazine. He was older, maybe in his 50s, with deep lines etched around his eyes. His name tag was stark and simple. Roy? Need a room? Roy asked, his voice gravelly. No, I'm just looking for someone, Eli replied, his own voice tight. Grace Miller. She might have stayed here years ago. A dry, humorless snort escaped Roy. He leaned back in his chair, his eyes scanning Eli from head to toe, as if sizing him up. You and everyone else. Eli's brows furrowed in confusion. What's that supposed to mean? It means she's been here, Roy said, his gaze unwavering. At least that's what the others say. People like you, they come asking. Sometimes they come crying. But the funny thing is, always checks in first. The clerk's words hung in the air, nonsensical and unnerving. What are you talking about? Eli demanded. Without another word, Roy tossed a key onto the scarred wooden counter. The number 6 was stamped into the tarnished metal. Go ahead, take a look for yourself. The door's already open. Eli's heart hammered against his ribs as he left the office and stepped into the long, dim hallway. The air here was thick with the cloying scent of mold and bleach, a smell that clung to the back of his throat. Each step he took on the worn-out carpet made the floorboards creak, the sound echoing loudly in the suffocating silence. Room 6 was at the very end of the hall, the number on the door scratched and half faded, just as Roy had said. The door was slightly ajar, a dark sliver of invitation. Eli pushed it open and stepped inside. The room was sparse, almost empty. A single bed with a thin, lumpy mattress, a dusty nightstand. solitary lamp that cast a weak humming glow. Looked like 1,000 other cheap motel rooms across the country. But then he saw it. Sitting on the dresser, as if waiting for him, was a familiar object from his past. His sister's old camcorder. His hands trembled as he approached it. This was impossible. The battery shouldn't have lasted 10 years. Yet as he got closer, he saw a tiny red light glowing steadily. The power was on. With a shaky finger, he pressed the play button. The small screen flickered to life, filled with crackling static. And then he heard her voice again. It was Grace, but quieter this time, different from the tape. It was a whisper, a secret shared from just beyond a veil. Eli, if you found this, it means he knows. You shouldn't be here. A long pause followed, heavy with unspoken fear. He's still watching. Eli froze, his blood turning to ice. He spoke to the empty room, to the recorded voice of his long-lost sister. Who's watching? There was no answer, only the faint, disembodied sound of breathing on the tape. Then, behind him, a sound shattered the quiet. Soft, definitive asterisk. Click asterisk. He spun around. The door to the hallway had swung shut. He was locked in. The hallway beyond was now plunged into darkness. There were no footsteps, no sounds of anyone leaving. But then he saw it, a shadow moving under the door. Slow, steady, pacing shadow, like a caged animal. Panic set in. He fumbled for his phone, his fingers clumsy and slick with sweat. He jabbed at the screen. No signal, of course. He forced himself to turn back to the camcorder, his only link to his sister. But the screen had changed. It wasn't playing the old recording anymore. It was showing him. It was a live feed of the room he was standing in right now. He saw his own terrified face staring back from the tiny screen. And behind him, in the reflection of the dark mirror on the wall, figure was standing in the corner of the room. A tall man, his face completely obscured by the shadows. The tape crackled one last time. Grace's voice came through again, desperate and pleading. A final, urgent message from across time. If you want to find me, you have to remember that night. And then the tape stopped. The camcorder screen went black. And the lamp in the room went out, plunging Eli into total, suffocating darkness with the unseen figure. What happened that night? Who is the man in the shadows? And is Grace still alive, trapped in this terrifying game? This story is a masterclass in building suspense, leaving us with more questions than answers and a deep sense of dread. The Sierra Motel isn't just a place, it's a gateway to a past that is very much alive. What do you think Eli should do? Let me know your theories down in the comments. I read every single one, and I'm fascinated to hear what you think is going on. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the dark. If you enjoyed this story and want more content that explores the chilling and the unknown, please hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Your support means the world to me. Stay safe, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next video. The thin, colorless morning light sliced through the motel blinds. I hadn't slept. Not a wink. Every time my eyes fluttered shut, I saw it again, that final chilling frame from the tape. Grace's reflection, her face etched with fear, and the dark silhouette of the man standing just behind her. I couldn't shake it. Before the sun had even thought about rising, I was out of the Sierra Motel. The streets of LA were slick with a recent rain, reflecting a bruised purple sky. I drove without thinking, my hands gripping the steering wheel, my knuckles white. My destination was the LAPD Records Division. It was a long shot, a desperate prayer, but I had to know if the case file still existed. And it did, tucked away in a dusty cabinet, filed under cold cases, missing persons. 1998. Case number 107 for GM, Grace Miller. My sister, the officer at the desk, a Detective Hayes, looked at me over the rim of her coffee cup. She was probably in her late 40s, with eyes that didn't miss a thing. They were sharp, analytical, and right now they were filled with a flicker of curiosity. She flipped through the thin file. "You're her brother?" she asked, her voice raspy from the morning. "Eli Miller." "Yeah," I confirmed, my own voice tight. "I need to see everything you have. Everything." Detective Hayes didn't move. She just studied me, taking in my sleepless eyes, my tense posture. "This case was closed years ago, Mr. Miller. Declared a voluntary disappearance. What makes you think we missed something after all this time?" I hesitated, my mind raced. What could I possibly say? Asterisk, my sister, who's been missing for over 2 decades, sent me a videotape from beyond the grave. Asterisk, they'd have me in a padded room before I could finish the sentence. So, I did the only thing I could. I lied. A friend, I started trying to keep my voice steady. They found something recently. A photo, it might show she's still alive, that did it. That was the hook. Her professional skepticism gave way to genuine interest. With a slow, deliberate movement, she pushed the worn manila folder across the counter toward me. "Knock yourself out," she said. "Just don't take anything. Don't make a mess." I opened the folder, and the ghosts of 1998 came rushing back. The contents were sparse, a collection of dead ends. There was a grainy surveillance still from a parking garage, showing a blurry figure that could have been anyone. A typed witness statement from someone who thought they heard a woman arguing with a man near her car, but couldn't be sure. It was all so frustratingly vague. Then my eyes landed on a single sheet of paper, an inventory list marked property collected. My heart hammered against my ribs as I read down the list. Among the mundane items, Kay's wallet, purse, were 3 entries that made the air leave my lungs. 1 camcorder, broken lens. 1 motel key, Sierra Motel. Room 6. 1 letter, unsigned. I froze, my blood turning to ice. I hadn't told her. I hadn't mentioned the motel. I certainly hadn't mentioned the camcorder. How could they know? My mind was a whirlwind of confusion. I quickly flipped the page, my hands trembling. The letter had been transcribed. "You said you'd help me, you promised, but you keep watching me instead." It was her handwriting. Grace's. I'd know it anywhere, but the words. They were addressed to me. It was a note she had written to me, but never sent. How did it end up in a police file? "Where's the original letter?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Detective Hayes frowned, looking up from her screen. "Destroyed. Standard evidence purge back in 2003. "Why? What's the big deal?" Just shook my head, unable to form the words. "No reason." She leaned closer across the counter, her expression softening slightly. "Listen, Mr. Miller," she said, her voice dropping. "Whatever you think you're going to find, I suggest you let it go. Sometimes people just want to disappear. You have to let them." But as she spoke, her own eyes drifted back to the file in front of me. She turned the next page, and her casual demeanor vanished in an instant. Her face went pale. "Wait a second. This can't be right." "What is it?" I demanded. She pointed a trembling finger to a faded signature at the bottom of the lead detective's initial report. The name was printed clearly, filed by Detective Alan Hayes. Her eyes, wide and full of a sudden dawning horror, shot up to meet mine. "That's my husband." We just stared at each other for a long moment, the hum of the office fluorescent lights the only sound. The air crackled with unspoken questions. She looked shaken, almost nervous. "He worked this case," she whispered, more to herself than to me. "Not once." With a sharp final movement, she slammed the folder shut. Her professional composure was gone, replaced by something fierce and protective. "Get out of here, Mr. Miller," she ordered, her voice low and urgent. "And don't come back." I was stunned, utterly confused. "Why? What's going on?" She leaned forward again, her eyes boring into mine. "Because if your sister is still out there," she hissed, "she's not hiding from you." I left without another word, her warning echoing in my ears. Outside, the sky had cleared to a brilliant, unforgiving blue, but the air felt heavier, thick with secrets. I got back into my car, my mind reeling. I picked up the case file she'd let me take, the pages still damp from the sweat on my hands. As I held it, angling it in the bright sunlight, I noticed something I'd missed before. Faint pencil markings on the back of the very last page, almost invisible. I squinted, holding it closer. It was a short, scribbled note. "He found me once. He'll find you too." My blood ran cold. Da-da-da-da-da. And then, just below it, written in darker, more urgent ink, was a final, cryptic message. "Room 6 isn't where it happened. It's where it starts." The search for my sister wasn't just about finding her anymore. It was about finding out what she was running from. And now it seemed I was running right alongside her. "Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. If you're as captivated by this mystery as I am, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what happens next. See you in the next video. Sound of heavy rain and a car engine humming. The drive to Silver Lake felt like it took forever, even though it was only 20 minutes. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white. The rain hitting the windshield, the tires on the wet asphalt, all sounded like someone breathing heavy and slow. My sister Grace's note was a constant loop in my head. He found me once. He'll find you too. And now there was another name to add to the nightmare. Detective Alan Hayes. The man who closed her case. The man who never even told his own wife about it. I pulled up to his house. It was one of those faded stucco places on a street where palm trees looked like they were giving up. This was the kind of neighborhood that's so quiet, you just know it's seen the worst things happen. I parked, took a deep breath, and walked up the porch steps. I knocked once, then again. Nothing. Just as I was about to turn and leave, the door creaked open. An older guy stood there, looking like he hadn't seen a razor or a good night's sleep in a week. His eyes were bloodshot. "You're not a cop," he said, his voice flat. I couldn't help myself. "Neither are you anymore," I shot back. A tiny, fleeting smile crossed his lips. "You must be Grace's brother." The inside of his house was a thick mix of whiskey and dust, and something else. Obsession. The dining table was buried under files. Old case folders, yellowed photographs, newspaper clippings about missing people. Dozens of them. All women. All from Los Angeles. All vanished between 1995 and 1999. A knot formed in my throat. "Why do you still have these?" I asked. Hayes sank into a chair and poured himself a drink, the amber liquid sloshing in the glass. "Because they all have the same ending," he said, his voice gravelly. "They all stop with a motel room." My blood ran cold. I barely got the words out. Sierra Motel. He just nodded. It's had different names over the years, but it's the same building, the same layout. Your sister's file. It was the last one I worked before I quit the force. I had to know. "Why did you quit?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled open a drawer and took out a photograph. The edges were curled and the colors had faded, but there was no mistaking her. It was Grace, standing outside room 6 of the Sierra Motel. She was smiling, holding a key. "She came to me before she vanished," Hayes said softly. "Told me someone was following her, someone she knew." My heart hammered against my ribs. "Who? Did she say who it was?" Hayes took a long, slow breath, letting it out like it was his last. "She wouldn't say, but she was terrified. She told me if anything happened to her, I should look for the boy in the mirror." I just stared at him, completely lost. The boy in the mirror? What is that supposed to mean? Hayes just shrugged, a weary, defeated gesture. "You tell me? You're the one who looks like him?" My mind went blank. "What?" He leaned forward then, his tired eyes suddenly sharp, intense. "You ever wonder why your name is in her case file, Eli?" My voice was barely a whisper. "No, I didn't even know it was in there until today." A sad, tired smile touched his lips. "I didn't write it there. Your sister did." The air in the room became thick, heavy. I could barely breathe. "What are you saying?" We slid the photo of Grace across the dusty table. "Look closer." I picked it up, my hand trembling. Behind Grace, in the reflection of the motel room window, faint, almost a ghost, was a figure. A man, standing inside room 6, and he was wearing my jacket, the one I lost years ago. I dropped the photo as if it had burned my fingers. "That's not me," Hayes sighed. It was the sigh of a man who had seen this exact moment play out before. It's always the same look. Denial first, then confusion, then the remembering. I was shaking my head, backing away. "You're drunk, you're rambling, you don't know what you're talking about." But his voice changed, became quieter, filled with a strange sadness. "I saw you there, Eli, that night. Came to the station, told me she was gone." The words hit me like a physical blow. "No, that's not possible. I was 16. Couldn't even drive back then." Hayes nodded slowly. "Think time works in a straight line in a place like that?" "The Sierra Motel doesn't keep calendars, keeps people." Just then, the storm outside exploded. The rain slammed against the windows and a brilliant flash of lightning lit up the room. And for a split second, I saw her. Behind Hayes, standing in the shadows, was the outline of a woman. Her hair was dark and wet, plastered to her face. She was just watching us. Then the room was dark again, and she was gone. Hayes poured another drink, his hands shaking so badly some of it spilled. "You should leave that tape alone," he warned, his voice barely a whisper. "She made it for a reason. She wanted you to remember. Just not yet." I had to get out of there. I turned for the door, but he called out after me. "If you go back to that motel," he said, "you won't find her. You'll find yourself." I stumbled out into the pouring rain, clutching that impossible photograph. As I got to my car, I caught my own reflection in the rain-streaked window. For a heartbeat, I thought I saw Grace standing there in the downpour, a sad smile on her face. Another flash of lightning lit up the sky. Her image vanished, but the reflection, my reflection, it stayed. And for the first time, I was truly afraid of what I saw. This story is just getting started, and it's going to get a lot darker from here. If you need to know what happens next, what I find at the Sierra Motel, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. You won't want to miss where this goes. Thanks for watching. The storm was over, but the city was holding its breath. I gripped the old photograph, my knuckles white. Every red light felt like a warning, a silent plea for me to turn back. But I couldn't. I had to know. My car pulled into the familiar, uneven lot of the Sierra Motel. The neon sign buzzed, half dead, just like I remembered. But the silence, that was new. It was heavy, intentional. And then I saw it. A silver sedan parked in front of room 6, the same license plate as Detective Hayes. My heart hammered against my ribs as I stepped out, the air thick with the smell of rain. The door to room 6 was ajar, a sliver of flickering light cutting through the darkness. "Detective Hayes?" I called out, my voice sounding small in the quiet. A voice answered from inside, weary and rough. "You shouldn't have come back here, Eli." I pushed the door open. Hayes was sitting on the edge of the bed, his shoulders slumped, his eyes bloodshot. The room smelled of dust and stale coffee. "Your sister didn't just disappear," he said, his voice barely a whisper. She ran from something or someone." I frowned. The unspoken name hung in the air between us. "You mean my father?" Hayes didn't confirm or deny. He just reached for a file on the nightstand. He fanned out the contents: old photos, crumpled receipts, and a motel registration card. Grace Miller, the signature read. But beneath it, another name stopped my breath. Eli Miller. "I never stayed here," I stammered, the words feeling like a lie even as I said them. Hayes looked at me, his gaze sharp and searching. "Maybe not in 1998, but your name was still there when I reopened the case." He handed me the card. The handwriting was mine. The slanted E, the rushed MI, didn't remember writing it, but my hand started to tremble. It was my signature. There was no denying it. Hayes poured a drink, his hand unsteady. "She trusted me, you know," he said, his voice thick with regret. "She told me she'd found proof, something that would ruin your father's career. She was planning to leave town the next morning, go to the press, but she never made it." My blood ran cold. "What proof?" Hayes looked down, avoiding my eyes. "She said he was involved in some dirty business at the precinct. Files going missing. Witnesses disappearing." He closed the folder with a soft thud. "That same night your father called me. He told me she'd changed her mind, that I shouldn't worry about it. A memory surfaced, sharp and unwelcome. That night, my father, leaving in the pouring rain, his jaw set. He said he had to fix something. I remember waiting by the window for him all night, until the sun came up, and he finally came back. He was silent. He walked straight to the sink and just washed his hands over and over again." Hayes' voice pulled me back to the present. "Your sister didn't die that night, Eli. I think she escaped." My mind reeled. Escaped? To where? The detective let out a long, tired sigh. "Before the police file was sealed, she left a note inside. It said if you ever came looking, to follow the tape." "What tape?" I asked, my chest tightening. "The one marked 2008, Hayes said. "The one she made for you?" A jolt went through me. "You knew about it all this time?" He nodded slowly. "She gave me a copy before she disappeared. She said one day you'd come back here, and when you did..." He trailed off as the lights in the motel room flickered violently, then steadied. "What's happening?" I asked, my eyes darting around the room. But Hayes wasn't looking at me. He was staring, frozen, at the window. Outside, under the sickly green glow of the motel sign, a figure stood motionless. A woman. Her hair was soaked from a rain that had already passed. Her dark red coat a slash of color in the gloom. Grace. Without thinking, I threw the door open, the cold night air hitting me like a physical blow. But the space beneath the sign was empty. There was no one there. Just a set of wet footprints, leading away from the motel, toward the dark, empty road. My head spun. When I turned back into the room, it was empty. Hayes was gone. His chair was vacant. The only thing left was the open file folder on the bed. And on top of it, something new. A freshly printed photograph. My heart stopped. The photo showed me standing right here in the doorway of room 6, looking out just as I had a moment ago. But the time stamp in the corner wasn't from tonight. It read, July 18th, 1998, 11:47 p.m. The exact night Grace disappeared. The exact time. And beneath the photo, scrawled in a handwriting I didn't recognize, were 4 chilling words that shattered everything I thought I knew. "You were there, Eli." What does this mean? Was I here that night? Is my memory a lie? The mystery is only getting deeper, and I feel like I'm losing my grip on reality. If you want to find out what happened in 1998 and what's on that tape from 2008, make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on. The next part of this story is coming soon, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. Thanks for watching. The rain started again as I stood in the doorway of room 6, staring at the photo in my hand. The timestamp glowed faintly in the light from the hallway. July 18th, 1998, 11:47 p.m. The same night, the same minute. I could feel the storm of 2 different years colliding inside that room. 2008 and 1998 folding over each other like wet paper. The smell of the air changed. The scent of dust turned to perfume. The wallpaper looked newer. For the first time, I realized I wasn't standing in the present anymore. I was back. I heard a knock from outside, faint, then louder. When I opened the door, a car was idling in the parking lot, its headlights cutting through the rain. A younger version of myself sat inside, 16, nervous, waiting. And beside the car, under an umbrella, stood my sister, Grace, alive, laughing at something. But her smile was thin, tired at the edges. I stepped closer, watching a memory I didn't remember. Grace was talking to someone, a tall man in a dark coat. I couldn't see his face, but I knew his voice, deep, familiar. "Our Father." I couldn't hear every word, but I heard enough. "You're making a mistake, Grace," he said. Her tone was calm, but sharp. "You already did that for both of us." I saw her hand gripping the motel key like it was a weapon. The older me wanted to shout to warn her, but my voice wouldn't work. Then my younger self stepped out of the car, confused, frightened. "Dad?" he asked. Both of them turned to look. And in that exact second, the memory cracked open. The rain froze midair. The light from the motel sign flickered once, and the entire world went silent. Grace's eyes shifted not to our father, not to the boy, but to me, to the version of myself who didn't belong to that year. The older one, she saw me. She whispered, barely audible, "Now you remember." The sound rushed back in thunder, tires on wet pavement, voices shouting. Grace backed toward the room, the key still in her hand. Our father followed, trying to calm her down. The boy, my younger self, stood between them, pleading, "Stop, please stop." Then there was a struggle, a shout, a slammed door. Then the sound of something falling. A lamp, maybe, or a picture frame. I closed my eyes. When I opened them again, the scene had changed. Grace was gone. The car was gone. Only the rain remained. I was standing in the same doorway, but now the room was dark, abandoned. Everything was back to 2008, except for the voice behind me. "You understand now?" she said. I turned. Grace stood by the window, her hair dry, her eyes steady. No shadow, no trembling hands. She was calm. "You didn't hurt me, Eli," she said softly. "You tried to help, but he couldn't let me go, so he let you forget. My throat tightened. I managed to ask. Because you never left, she answered. Every time you try to remember, you come back to this room. She walked toward me, her reflection trailing slightly behind in the cracked mirror on the wall. The tape wasn't a warning. It was a door.
Yes.
You had to open it yourself. I shook my head, completely lost. I don't understand. What do I do now? She smiled, that same tired, forgiving smile. Finish what I started. She handed me the Motel guest book. Its pages were blank, except for one line. Grace Miller, checked out. I looked down. Another space waited beneath it. The pen was warm in my hand. If I sign this, I whispered. Will I forget again? No, she said. You'll remember everything. And then you'll let me go. I hesitated. The rain tapped against the window like a ticking clock. Then, I wrote my name. Eli Miller, checkout complete. The ink spread, glowing faintly, and then faded. Grace stepped back toward the window. The light from the sign outside washed over her face. For the first time, she looked peaceful. It's over, she said. You can go home now. And as she turned, she added, almost to herself, the room keeps what it needs. It forgets the rest. Then she was gone. No sound, no trace. Just the echo of her voice and the faint smell of rain. When I walked outside, dawn was breaking. The Sierra Motel sign flickered one last time, then went completely dark. A for sale notice fluttered against the post. I looked back at room 6. Its curtains were open, the light inside warm and still. On the dashboard of my car lay the photo that had started it all. But now it was different. Grace stood by the car waving, and beside her a younger me smiled back. Our father wasn't in the picture anymore. I turned the key, started the engine, and drove until the motel disappeared in the mirror. That night, rain returned to Los Angeles. The city lights reflected across the empty streets, and for a brief moment, down a forgotten stretch of highway, a flicker of neon came alive. Sierra Motel, vacancy. Only one room glowed. Number 6. Inside, on the nightstand. A new guest book lay open, its first line written in a graceful, familiar handwriting. Grace Miller home. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. If you enjoyed this story, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel for more. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what happened in room 6, so leave a comment down below. Till next time, stay curious.